Welcome to the Save with Sex podcast. I'm your host, Siobhan L., pleasure scholar and creative mother of the Muses Lab. Together, we journey through sex, pleasure, and the erotic as it relates to our relationships, spirit, self, and our overall human experience. I'm elated to be your guide on this adventure. So grab your tools of pleasure, ground, and let's go. Hello, and welcome to the Save with Sex podcast. I am your host, Siobhan L., and I have a special guest with me, one of my favorite sensual movement practitioners and artists. I have a sensual movement practitioner and author of Pleasure Principles for Driven Women, Lily Shepard.
Hey.
Hey. I'm super excited that you are here. I know that we have been trying to connect and collaborate with one another for some time. And when we first started talking about coming together to do this podcast, I was trying to remember how I found you. I don't even know how I found you. I just know you popped up in my feed and I was like, what is this? With the twerk going on? I was like, yes, I love it. And ever since, I've just been such a fan of your content and your message and your principles, your ideology, and your values. So for those who are being introduced to this audience, to Miss Lily Shepard, what would you like for everyone to know? Well, first, start. What would you like for everyone to know about who Lily is? And then next question, your journey to where you are now.
Oh, okay. Just start it right off then. Wow, what would I want? Okay, about who Lily is. Ooh. Oh, Lily is so many things. How hmm. And so many things that I want people to know and so many things that are just for me. I
Yes.
guess I would want people to know that it is a mission of mine to empower women to shift the paradigm
Mm.
about how they see themselves as it relates to pleasure and just start thinking in terms of a much more open and free life, and to understand that that doesn't really need a title, right? When you say open and free, people think, oh, free spirit, wow, woman, multiple relationships, not a care in the world. And I'm like, you can still be a very responsible, goal oriented partner, mother, employee,
Mm.
boss, whatever it is, and still have a certain amount of freedom in your life. Yeah, that was long winded as hell, but
Mhm.
that's what I would want people to know.
I love that though. I feel like that's important because, like you said, when people think about the concept of freedom or being a liberated woman, it's under the guise of I have to label myself as this, as opposed to just like an embodiment. And I think that's important, particularly with what you do, because talking about pleasure principles and sensual movement, I feel like those are ways that we can embody these characteristics or ideals. So, on your journey, how did you get from, I guess, recognizing that this is the path that you wanted to take and then embodying this to become who we know now as Lily Shepard?
Hmm. Well, I have to say I started off, as a younger woman, I did everything according to the plan, right?
Mhm.
I went to college, I graduated, I met a man, I got married, I had a child shortly thereafter. I was like following the plan. And that wasn't so bad,
Yeah.
but it wasn't until that plan deteriorated that I began to think, like, whose plan really was this?
Mm.
I had to rethink, was this really what I wanted all along? Once I had what I thought I was supposed to have, from a societal perspective, and that all crumbled, I was just left questioning, is this what I really even wanted in the first place? And that's what started me on a path to freedom and thinking like, well, what do I really want, and how do I envision my life as a woman? This is something I thought I wanted. Now that it's gone, I realize that
Mhm.
it wasn't even really what I truly desired. It was just what I thought I should be doing. So now how can we like start to build the life that, that I really wanted to be living, and what does that look like? And that was completely different than the prescribed path.
I love that because and I feel like that's important, right? Because all of us who talk about embodying pleasure and building a practice, building a sensual movement practice, a lot of us realize that the path for us as women, identifying women, is not what's conducive to how we want to show up in the world. And then that begins our journey. So like what does that mean for me to show up as myself? What does that mean for me to have a pleasure centered life? What does that mean for me to be sensual? Does sensual have to connect to sex? Like how am I experiencing sensuality? What does it mean to touch myself? Because a lot of your content that you have online, you're touching yourself and you're like really sinking into what it means to just kind of just be into your body and just ground into yourself. And I feel like that's important because as women, we don't like touch ourselves in that way. And we feel like if we do touch ourselves in that way, that it has to be in a sexual connotation, not just genuinely enjoying ourselves. And that kind of leads me to what we were talking about before about performance, right? Because can we equate to kind of like touching ourselves as a means of performance? And can that be something that's pleasurable?
Absolutely. I think what gets lost in the difference between I know what it's like to touch myself in a sexual way, and I also know what it's like to touch myself as a form of self-soothing,
Mm.
right? Like this is comforting. This is my body. Like anytime that I put my hands on my body, it doesn't have to be labeled a sexual thing or I'm trying to pleasure myself. It's like this is comforting, this is soothing. I'm finding comfort like literally in my own skin. And so I think a lot of it has to do with the labels that we put on that, when it comes to how we interact with our own bodies. Like, how dare somebody have a judgment on
Yes.
how we interact with our vessel on this earth? I mean, that's just nuts to me, but people do it all the time. And I think to your point about performance, I think it's important that women understand the difference between performance and between an honest exploration of who they are and of their bodies, because we're conditioned for performance
Mhm.
from the very beginning, especially as it relates to sexuality. And so I think a lot of us kind of have it confused. It's a very blurred line into what is really my pure expression and what am I performing.
So in your work when you do, because I know you do coaching and you also do classes, what are some steps for someone who's trying to figure out what their performance frequency, if you will, is? What are some steps that they can take to differentiate between them performing as just an expression and performing for a purpose or an audience?
Right. I think, well, for me, I'll tell you, how I do that. And I think for me, performance, I mean, because that was a jump that I had to make. I grew up in movement as a performance, both as a trained dancer, as an exotic dancer. There was always an audience, and there was always some type of feedback that I was looking to elicit from that audience through my movement.
Mhm.
So when I started moving as a form of self healing and as a form of exploration, I had to just strip it all down. I mean, number one, get out of the mirror, right? Because I love the mirror. I'm a dancer. I love the mirror. I'll sit and look at myself on my worst day all day. But there's something about taking that part out of it and just what does it feel like in my body? I'm not concerned with what it looks like, even to my own self. I'm just more concerned with what does this feel like, and what can I learn from this? Like, what is my body telling me? What is, when I move in this certain way, what feelings come up? And really trying to get some information from my body and from the movement versus to tell a story or to try to convey something to somebody else.
That so as you were talking, a couple things came up for me. I thought about performance for survival. So I feel like in the world, we have to perform in order to survive, in order to navigate things like capitalism, being in the workplace. So that's a level of performance. But your point of performing to understand what your unique expression is, what your body is trying to tell, the story that your body's trying to tell. It also made me think about worship. And I'm wondering if there is kind of like a bridge or a connectivity between performing to understand and to gather information in the body and body worship.
So tell me your definition of body worship, because I feel like everybody has a different one. And so I just want to make sure that I understand the way that you approach it.
So when I think about body worship, I think about myself as the living altar and exalting myself in a
Mm.
form of worship, praising myself. That can be through touch, that can be through words of affirmation, mainly through touch, but words of affirmation, body worship can be through the jewelry that I wear, adorning myself, my body as the living altar, the makeup that I wear, glamoring myself. So I'm thinking about body worship in terms of me kind of venerating myself as this living altar and giving myself praise in the form of gifts and messages and things that I send to myself.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. And I guess I never thought about it in those terms. I talk a lot with my clients about adornment and just, but we don't go that far. And
Yeah.
I love that you take it all the way, into the body as an altar, because it's so important. And I try to approach adornment, right, from the standpoint of what is underneath, even because for me, people say, oh, I see you on social media. Child, I be in sweatpants all the time, and it's like, that's great. And I do love glam and I do love all of that. But honestly, in my day to day, I love comfort. I
Mhm.
love bagginess. It's hard for me to be creative in tight clothing. I just can't do it. And so for me, the adornment comes underneath, right? What oil is on my skin? What waist beads do I have? What are my panties looking like? What do I smell like? Like, what's underneath everything that's maybe not, everyone can't see it, but I know that it's there, and it's really special. So I don't even know if that answered your question, but I just wanted to share that. And I love what you said about body worship and about the body as a living altar. I'm gonna have to sit with that and let that sink in, because that's beautiful.
Yes, I feel like it kind of does begin to bridge a gap or show that there's a mutual inclusivity between performance and body worship because now I'm as you're talking, I'm thinking about um from a performance standpoint, when if the world is our stage, how am I presenting myself into the world? And how am I using this space of performance and creating a pleasure centric experience for myself through my lingerie, through the oils that I use, through the body butters that I use, through the type of jewelry that I use, through the clothes that I choose to wear, being in comfort. Like what material of this if I like sweatpants, what type of material of
Mm.
the sweatpants am I using? And am I allowing that to create some type of soothing element on my skin? If I'm using makeup, what type of makeup am I putting on my face? Is there certain colors that I'm using that want to evoke some sense of expression? Because the outer, I feel like in the performance piece, in terms of body worship, the outer expression, the outer performance dictates or not dictates, but comes together with the inner performance, like what's underneath the surface. And that if I'm using performance as a means of pleasure, as a means of body worship, then that begins to tell a broader story of how I'm showing up as myself into the world, if that makes sense.
That makes all the sense in the world. And I find it so sad that a lot of women do not even consider any of the things that we just talked about. We will make sure that the house is clean. We will make sure that the dinner is cooked. We will make sure our kids go out looking straight and good and together. We will make sure that our partner, we straightening up his or her stuff, tightening them up. But like when it comes to us, there's not that level of care and thought. I'm not going to say that most women don't care how they present. They do, but that level of intention, and it's not frivolous.
I agree. It's
It's
not.
not frivolous. It's very important,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about kind of changing the way that we're thinking about these kind of things, because that's a small adjustment. Because people hear pleasure, freedom, and they think, oh, I have to abandon everything and I have to spend money on candles and bubbles. And now I have to turn into some goddess chick that's going to do all of this stuff and candles and incense. And it's, it's not that. It can be done. It's just a matter of intention.
I agree. I agree. I always try to say pleasure is simple because, to your point, when people hear that, they think pleasure is inaccessible to them, and it really boils down to the small nuances that you can create within your space, within your reality, and it starts with things that you already have and things
Mm.
that are accessible to you.
Yeah, it's a
So,
choice. It's really just making the choice. I go through an exercise with my clients and I have them write down an exhaustive list of
mm,
everything that they take pleasure in, that they find pleasure in, from the smallest things to, their cup of morning tea, or I
mm,
love when I walk to get the mail out of the mailbox with no bra and my titties swing freely in the air. Whatever little moment, two grand moments of vacations and spa days, but have them list everything,
mhm,
and then also how long those things take and the resources that are required. So now you have this whole entire list. You cannot sit up here and tell me
mm,
that you can't build these things into your day. You can't go on a vacation every day. You can't maybe get a massage every day, but I guarantee you can let them titties swing to the mailbox and have a cup of tea, and light the candle that you like you can do that. So I think boiling down this big notion of pleasure and freedom into, like, how can I just incorporate small moments into my life with the things, like you said, that I already have?
yeah.
How can I adorn myself? How can I feel good in my skin? It's really very, very simple. It just takes making the decision.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Um, I want to pivot and I want to talk about your book.
Yes.
I want to talk about your book because I'm interested. I'm interested in knowing your inspiration behind the book and what you want women to take away from the book.
Yeah, my inspiration was driven women. Like, I consider myself a driven woman. I'm
Mm,
I'm ambitious. I want to go after what I want in life. And I have a drive to make things happen. And that being said, I found that I was, one, operating in masculine energy a lot,
mm,
because I felt that that was the only way to make things happen. Like, yes, divine feminine and all that, but that's for certain times and
mm,
certain situations. When it comes to goals and deadlines and numbers and things like that, I need to be in this masculine space. It's false. And I learned that, and I wanted to share how I learned that. And also inspiring women to move their bodies and just to get there's so much wisdom there. And I was meeting so many women in the classes that I was teaching and workshops that had everything: beautiful partners, kids, homes, finally have reached this level of success financially, disposable income, traveling, the car they want, the bags they want, but yet feeling dry,
mm,
feeling rigid,
mm,
and feeling disconnected.
mm.
And a lot of it had to do with lacking pleasure. All of those things that we talked about, making that list, they have no idea the very first question, what makes you feel good? And they don't know because it's not something that they've considered. Life has been in service to husband, to children, to career, to caretaking, to service to the community, to all of these things that, we've been told that's what makes a good woman. You have to do those things and put those things first. And those things do make a good woman, but also, how good of a woman can you be if you're depleted?
Mm, mm. That. Mm-mm-mm. I love that. I love that. Even though I don't particularly say masculine and feminine energy anymore, I used to, but still operating in that reactive quality. I believe a lot of us, women, feminine spectrum persons, femme identifying persons, we've operated that as a means to survival because the world tells us in order for us to reach our goals, that this level of ambition has to be like we have to operate in this and that there's no balance because if we tap into our non-reactive qualities or passive qualities, then that makes us weak. And in order for us to be in this male driven world, we have to be overly aggressive, we have to be overly assertive, but then when we do that, those things are then used against us. So it's a challenge to find a balance between being that ambitious person, being that assertive person, but also understanding that our nurturing qualities have space, not
Mm,
just for our children or for a partner, but that nurturing quality has a space. That collaborative energy that we have has a space. That empathetic energy, that empathetic qualities that we have a space and can influence us realizing ourselves in the world. So I think that,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, that's it. You said it perfectly because we're natural leaders,
Mhm.
but yet we're not invited to lead in the way that we do. We're
Yeah.
invited, it's like exactly what you were saying, all of those pieces of us. And I see women all the time kind of fall into, I have to be this identity in
Mhm.
the workspace, in order to be listened to, respected, taken seriously. And then I have to come over here and be a different identity with my partner, with my children, with my friends. And that's exhausting to be constantly navigating back and forth.
It is, and then you feel like you're in an identity crisis. I was having a conversation with myself because I have conversations with myself often. So I was having a conversation with myself this morning, and I was expressing my frustration with having to because I am currently being told that I'm not doing more or I'm not showing up enough. Whatever, I don't even know what that means. It's very vague and it's very ambiguous. And it makes me feel like people are expecting me to kind of just be this bullish, bitchy woman.
Mm,
And I don't want to operate like that. Like everything in my life, I'm transitioning it into a flow state. So things need to flow. I don't want to operate in resistance. I don't want to have to pull things from anybody. I don't want to have to pull things from myself. I need it to flow. And if I have to be a bitch to you, quote unquote, if I have to be a bitch to you, if I have to be bitchy to you, if I have to chase you, if I have to stalk you, that feels like resistance to me. So naturally, my body is going to start kind of pulling back from that because it's not in the flow state that I've spoken into the atmosphere and said that I wanted to create for myself. And I get frustrated because yes, we have leadership qualities and you have to be assertive, you have to have some sense of ambition, you have to be collaborative and you have to work together. But if in order for me to do that, I have to come outside of myself and I have to push and I have to pull and I have to force and I have to stalk and I have to claw, is that really in alignment with who I should be if I'm operating in this feminine expression, if I'm operating in this non reactive expression? So then it feels like I'm in an identity crisis because I'm telling the universe that I want to be in this flow state, that I don't want to be in resistance, that I want to live a life of ease and opulence, but I have to be in this particular space, in this particular atmosphere, and I got to be punchy. I got to be resistant. I got to be pushing. I got to be pulling. I got to be, rah. I got to be cutting people's heads off and slicing people at the throat and cutting people's throat. And that's in opposition to the life that I said, or to the energy and the frequency that I've given to the universe. So now it feels like I'm in an identity crisis, because how do I navigate this in this flow state? Was I wrong to put that out into the universe and say that I want to be in a flow state? Do I have to compartmentalize myself? So, to your point, you have women who are one way in the workplace in their life, and then they have to turn around and be another place. And it's hard to turn that off. When you in that reactive state, it's a challenge to turn that off.
And it's a lot of inner turmoil, and that's why a lot, I talk in the book about how important the nervous system is with all of that,
Mm,
and I recently got, my 200-hour, trauma-informed yoga certification because I'm like, I know what I know as far as movement, right? I've been a
mhm.
dancer over 20 years. I
Yeah.
know what I know as far as my experiences as a woman, but
Mhm.
that piece of it, the nervous system, and how we need to go through this life and be able to navigate through those things in a regulated state is so important. And it was important for me to understand that on a deeper level and share that with the women that I work with, because it's all kinds of dysregulation and craziness that happens when you're trying to go between these different worlds. And how do you find, and your body holds that, and that manifests, as chronic stress, as illness, as tension in the body. And so how can you regulate and find ways of self-soothing? Like for me, the touching, that's a big part of it. It's like,
Yeah.
that's how I do it.
Yeah.
That's how I do it. That's how, and how do you create those practices? How do you find out the things that are going to, when you're shifting, or when you're, coming up against something that feels resistant, how can you settle that in your body so that it doesn't, spiral and get
Yeah.
bigger and turn into, manifest as real physical tension and
Yeah.
stress?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good, because all the spirituals and the gurus will say it begins in your nervous system. And that's so important to have more trauma informed practitioners, because because we know about trigger points. A word can trigger something, just a word, because somebody in your childhood said this to you and it was in this particular context. So now when you hear this word, it activates something in you. And that's important when you're creating a pleasure practice, because if we're talking about freedom, so to speak, as we were saying before, and freedom to you is centered around something that was visceral in your childhood, in your adolescence, it's hard for me to use that word for you, because you're going to resist everything that I'm trying to say, because your mind is stuck on how this word is associated to an occurrence in your life that was traumatic to you.
Exactly, exactly. And I think, to that end, it's also important that we start looking at triggers as, what
Mm,
are the positive triggers? We spend so much time on, like, what's triggering us and what gives a reaction and all of this and that. But also, I like to invite people to think of, what are the things that when you think of, light you up. When you hear this word, or when you smell this smell, or when you have this recollection, the things that give your body a brightened quality, a relaxed quality, and try to incorporate more of that as well. Because I think we do get hyper focused on who triggered me, what my triggers are, what my traumas are, what my hurts are. And we do need to be aware of those things and acknowledge them. But I think it's just as important to acknowledge what, like, yes feels like, what, like, oh my God feels like, what those things feel like in our body, as well as, what the no, stop, I'm unsafe feelings feel like.
I love that, and it connects to this new wave of everyone looking at green flags. Like, what are your green flags? Because you're right, we do focus on the adverse of our experience, the red flags, and it helps us know what we don't want, but it doesn't navigate a bridge to connection to what we do want. Because if all you know is what you don't want and you can't connect it to the things that you do want, it's hard to again create that pleasure practice, be able to do the body worship, be able to find your creative expression, your pleasurable expression, because you don't really know what your body wants. You don't know what the story is in your body of the things that give you that, oh yes, that hell yes, and that, oh, this is it. You don't know what that looks like. And I think also believe that's what creates a challenge with people understanding pleasure outside of penetration and
Mm,
sensuality outside of sex. Because if you don't know the things outside of those, that arousal space that incites your body, you don't have the language to be able to communicate that and to express that to people.
absolutely. That's a great point. And that's been part of my practice recently is really just I'm not even thinking about what I don't want. I had to really realize how much I was doing that of
Mm,
like, okay, well, if this, because I always want a plan B, you know? I always want a plan B. I always want to know where am I pivoting to if shit don't go right. Okay. And so by doing that, I was spending a lot of time and energy on what I didn't want to happen and how I was going to move from that. And so just in this past year, these just first couple months, I've been like, I'm not going to think at all whatsoever about anything that I don't want to. I'm only thinking about the outcome that I want only. So, and it's hard work. It's hard work when you're used to thinking of, okay, well, if this don't go like this, I'm going to do this. Okay, well, ooh, this is not looking like it's going to fall through. No, I'm not doing that anymore. And I tell you, the amount of times that I have to just stop myself. And that's when I move though. That's when I move. I'm like, okay, stop. Because the mind is now starting to tell me a story that I'm not trying to hear. And I'm trying to focus on the result that I want. And I'm trying to focus on what that feels like in my body. And sometimes it's hard to access it just sitting still. So I got to move with it and let it like really sink in for me. Otherwise, it just feels fake. You know, like affirmation sometimes, come on, it just feels fake. And it doesn't. I tried that. I tried that for a long time, and I was just like, "This is whack. It's not working. I'm just saying words. I feel none of it, and I feel even worse because it's supposed to make me feel better."
that makes sense. But a lot of people resist affirmations because if it doesn't resonate, like you said, with where you are in your body, if it doesn't connect, then it feels fake and it feels funny. You said something that made me think, and it just it helped me because I need this for myself. When you are in this space of unlearning and you start to kind of backslide, so to speak, into ways that you're trying to unlearn, you start to move. When you get into your head, you start to move. And I think that is important with knowing your modalities, like what modalities bring you back into pleasure. For me, it tends to be writing or painting or doing something creative. And it didn't connect until you said that just now. It didn't connect for me that when I'm in my head, I need to pause, take a stop, and go to the modality that brings me pleasure, that helps me concentrate, that's meditative for me. And movement is meditative for a lot of people because it just allows you to just be, right? I'm trying to get better at a movement practice, but I'm in my head a lot because I'm thinking about, oh, this doesn't look right. Bitch, ain't nobody, can't nobody see you. So, so I'm thinking,
But isn't it crazy how with our own self, it
yeah,
won't be nobody there, and we're still like, "Oh, this don't," like, there's some imaginary audience out there looking at us.
judging, judging your own self. Like, why am I judging myself? This is supposed to be a no, a judgment free zone. And here I
Mhm.
am judging myself about how I'm soothing myself. Like, it's so embedded into our psyche of this level of perfection as human beings, but particularly as feminine spectrum, feminine identifying people, we have this mindset of perfection that everything that we has to do has to be performance ready. It has to be perfect. So I think shifting our mindset from being performance ready and performance as a means of expression, as a means of grounding as a means of connecting with our nervous system and connecting with how our body wants to tell a story, that's going to be super helpful.
Yeah, that's the way forward. That's the way forward. I had to let that go. I mean, I struggled a lot with what you were talking about, just because being a dancer, like, okay, in Austin, teaching a lot of dance, people know me as a dancer, right? So when I go out, oh, girl, twerk.
Mhm.
Oh, girl, get in the middle of the circle. Oh, girl, this your song. Oh, girl, come on stage. And like, sometimes that's the moment and that's the feeling and that's the vibe. But a lot of times it's not. And it's a lot of the times I had to stop thinking of people's expectation, that perfectionism, right? Well, people know me as a dancer. They've taken my class. I'm supposed to be the expert at this movement. I can't go out here looking crazy. But sometimes I just want to go out and look crazy and do some weird shit. Like the music hits me in a certain way and I just want to do some weird shit. And I had to get over that and be like, listen, if these people be like, oh, I saw her out dancing and she was looking crazy. Okay, well then, all right. But I had to let go of that. I just posted something on my story about that. Like when you tell people you're a dancer and they be like, show me a move. And you be like, bitch, what? You know what I'm saying? Like who?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get that, or like you meet somebody, I'm an actor. Show me some lines. I mean, it's just a weird thing.
That's weird.
Oh, you rap? Let me hear some bars. Like,
That's
yo,
that's weird. Yeah.
I'm being stop it.
Mm.
But it's that has helped me let go of the perfectionism piece that you talked about, especially like when it's something that you're known for,
Yeah.
right? And then it's like you have to show up in that above average every single time.
Mm. First of all, that just liberated me because I'm known for a couple things, right? I'm known for being a writer. So anytime there's writing opportunities or anything that's happening, oh girl, you should do it. You should write. And what people don't know is that I pitch to places, to magazines and online publications all the time, and I be getting no's left and right, right? Like, I be getting no's left and right. So being a writer, but also people know me as this really spiritual, intuitive person. And some days I'll be 2 seconds from Colt 45 and busting again in the head. Like that I am not always this
Mm,
spiritual, majestic, unicorn-like being. Some days I spiral into depression. And that's why I'm very transparent about me experiencing situational depression, me being ADHD, because I don't always have it all together. A lot of times I'm just stuck in my head and I'm just there whatever's happening, that's where I'm at. So I don't always have it together. And that just liberated me of just letting go of the expectation to just have it all together and teaching people that some days I am going to be that archetype of a person that people know me to be. And then some days I'm just going to be my regular ass human self. And I'm just going to exist because existing is so hard to do, particularly as a Black person.
mm.
Existing is so hard to do. So that liberated me. I needed that. So thank you.
You are welcome. I'm glad. I'm so glad because we never know. We think we know somebody. Just let people be who they are.
Pretty much.
We
Pretty much.
put their expectation, our expectations on them of like, well, I know you to be this. So when I see you, this is what I expect of you because I've built this up in my mind and it don't work like that,
Yes.
So I think it's something we can all learn from and we can all work on is just meeting the human, just meeting the human, even if we have know somebody to be something or has written something that touched us or we've seen them dancing in a way that we thought was beautiful and like we can express all of those things, but just meet the human being and allow them to be human with you.
Yes. I love that. I love that. I know we're approaching time, but if there's anything that you want the Muses Lab slash Say It With Sex audience to know, anything that you have upcoming, um, talk about your book, but anything you have upcoming, anything that you want the people them to know. Please feel free to share.
Yeah, the book, Pleasure Principles for Driven Women, Reclaiming Pleasure Through Movement, is available on Amazon, Barnes& Noble, Target.com, all of the places. You can follow me at Lily Shepard Moves on Instagram. Also on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get my little LinkedIn professional
Okay.
business profile popping as well. So, come follow me there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's constantly things happening, moving. I have an offering right now called the Movement Playground, which I'm excited about, and that is basically to help people build their own movement practice and to just get together in the playground and have fun and explore and flow and play with different modalities and different styles of movement. It's online, it's on Zoom, it's community, it's it's just being hyped up. We all deserve that feeling of being hyped up while you dance, and not everybody wants to be going out to the club and all that to experience that. So it's just a group of women that are there to hype you up as you dance and support in getting more movement into your life. And yeah, I'm excited. There's going to be a lot. I got a lot of things cooking, but just follow me and you'll see it all
I love
in due
that.
time.
I love that. I love that. And for anyone who's either watching this video or listening to the audio version of this podcast, I have all that information in the show notes, how you can reach Lily and join her movement
Yes,
squad.
join me. I love people. I have noticed that I love people. I'm like, yes, can you please just email me, send me a DM, like, hey, girl, because I'm that weird person. I'll hear somebody on a podcast and be like, oh my God, hey, I just, I thought it was so great. Like, I think why don't more people do that? I'm that person. So I'm telling you, if anything resonated, do not be scared to, jump in my inbox or shoot me an email. Because I'd love to just help you create a movement practice. That is, I feel, what I'm here for is the more people that I can connect with movement and help form a relationship with their bodies and form a practice that works for them to connect to pleasure, the better we all are going to be.
I love it. I love it. Personability is important. So I love that. Mm, that was great. This was juicy. I love it.
It was so juicy. I felt like we could go on
For
forever.
hours, right? That means we gotta do a part two.
Hey, already
Yes. We gotta do a part two.
already
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining the Save with Sex
I can't
podcast.
hear you. What happened? Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay, there you are.
Yay. Thank you for
No,
tuning in.
going again.
Oh no. Thank you for tuning into the Save with Sex podcast. I don't know what happened, but thank you for tuning into the Save with Sex podcast. And thank you, Lily, for coming in and joining us here on the Save with Sex podcast. And until we meet again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Save with Sex podcast, an audio experience of the Muses Lab. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with like minds. And if you're down for the get down, subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and never miss an episode.